NFTs are more than digital art. They provide real utility within the growing world of the metaverse. This panel will discuss how NFTs can be used as gateways to unique virtual experiences, real-world benefits, and governance in virtual ecosystems. So I'd like to invite on the stage Director of Growth at Star Atlas, Miguel Moorcraft. Applause. Thank you. You guys are a great crowd. CBO of Memeland, Kevin Kwong. And Senior Editor of Being Crypto, Daria Leon. Big round of applause. Welcome our panel. Very good.
Hi, it's me again. If you just join us, I'm Daria Leon. No. Senior editor at Being Crypto. We're one of the biggest media, Web3 media outlets in the world, covering all things crypto in like 20 languages. I guess it's last panel of the day, or maybe second to last. So please, we won't take a lot of your time. But first, I want to introduce, I want to ask my speakers to introduce themselves briefly, please.
Sure, I can start. Hi, everybody. I'm Robby. I run investments at Animoca Brands. I'm not Kevin, by the way. Kevin couldn't make it. But I run investments at Animoca Brands, and we make games.
Hi, I'm Miguel. I'm the Director of Growth at Star Atlas, and we're building on Solana.
If you'll keep your mic a bit closer.
Closer?
That would be great. Yes.
Does that work?
Thanks.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, guys, we discussed a bit that angle we want to discuss today, and we don't want to make another boring talk. So let's discuss a bit hot things. Many people are saying both NFT narrative and Metaverse narratives are very dead, because we know many projects are somewhere in the floor price at the moment, and the interests of investors and users to NFT and Metaverse dropped like significantly. So what do you think led this downturn? And so maybe the initial promises were overhyped, so what happened?
So I think the best example, if you're looking at it from a price perspective, so let's say price is the metric that you're looking for, then look at Apecoin this week, right? On the back of Ape, the Ape community, the Yuga Labs sort of BAYC, MAYC community is incredibly passionate. Obviously, people come and go in the community and become members and sell their PFPs over time. But they have one of the best retention rates in the industry. So it's, I'm cherry picking. It's a higher watermark. But I think that it's a perfect example of how you can keep a community engaged over the long term by providing a variety of different projects and utilities. It started out as a PFP collection, but in fact is much more than that. There's lifestyle merchandise, live events, and most importantly, there's an active community of members that build businesses around the brands of their apes. So there's actually a thriving ecosystem. And so I think one of the things that other projects struggle with is they've not been able to actually really encourage that building of an ecosystem that encourages long-term sustainability.
But we can compare Yuga that has a lot of resources with our smaller project.
Yes and no, because there are lots of projects that have a lot of resources that wasted them too. Right? So you have to give credit, because the strength of Yuga is not the balance sheet of Yuga Labs. The strength of Yuga is the power of the community, right? And so, yes, they benefited from extraordinary market timing. So they were able to, have a lot of interest and investment and support for the launch of the Apecoin, et cetera. But 2 years later, lots of that community is still there. They could have just sold their apes and made money and left.
Yeah, right. Miguel, jump in.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with the power of the community. I don't think it's overhyped. I actually think it's underhyped. I think that at the beginning there are phases in crypto, right? Right now we're looking at deep in, and everybody's talking about deep in. Deep in already happened in the past. There was already a deep in phase in the past as well, right? So the metaverse was at all-time highs, and then it was at all-time lows. What we're seeing now is a lot more products being developed, products being put out there at a much higher level of quality, which is bringing quality members to the community, and then builders. The idea of the metaverse And the difference between a metaverse and a traditional game is that people can build with you, and people help grow the ecosystem with you. It's not just the game development studio that develops the game, puts it out there, somebody buys it, and you buy the skins. No, people add to the game. People create primitives and experiences around the game, and that brings more people in the sense of ecosystem rather than just a game studio putting something out for revenue and then taking all the profits. So the power of that is we haven't seen, like, we've seen the tip of the iceberg in that. I really do think that it isn't overhyped, and we haven't seen anything yet.
How do you rate the current stage of both NFT and Metaverse?
We're warming up. I mean, we already see, I think, look, if you want to build high quality metaverses, I mean, we were just hearing how Sandbox is coming up with season 4, right? There's so many creators already creating on Sandbox, and Sandbox was one of the first to achieve that kind of creator-builder economy. But we do see a lot of good quality projects, including Star Atlas, starting to reach a point of maturity that is required. You know, a normal game takes, a normal AAA game on Unreal Engine 5 takes 10 years to build. If we think about the first Metaverse phase 4 years ago, I mean, there is still time that needs to happen before we see these products at full maturity. And we're developing a lot faster in Web3 than in traditional Web2. The funding model, the creation of the community at the inception of the project rather than at the end of the project means that you need to deliver more and faster. And so what we're seeing is actually very mature products coming out a lot earlier than they should, or that they would in other circumstances.
And I think also, I was just going to add to that, because obviously my colleague Bertrand was on earlier talking about Sandbox Season 4. And I think one thing that Sandbox may have a similar situation to what we were talking about with Yuga is, yes, Sandbox has resources, you know, more resources than smaller projects maybe, but they have 100 new experiences in Season 4. There is no way that the Sandbox team could have made 100 new, you know, experiences. These were all built by the community, because that's what enables kind of the hyper-scaling of what goes on, because you have active community participation. And fortunately, you have Web3, which gives them the financial rails and infrastructure that allows community members to benefit from their own creations. And so that's what encourages them to keep building.
How the building in this space differs, like, let's say, 4 years ago, last cycle, and now?
I think the simplest thing is that there's lots more tooling available. So you don't have to keep inventing tools. You know, for anybody who was around 4 and 5 years ago making content, you'll recall that, you know, unless you were doing something like on mainnet Ethereum that somebody else had done before, you had to build your own marketplace, your own wallet, your own bridges, you know, everything you had to do from scratch. Whereas now, there are fantastic third-party tools that allow game developers to focus more on the game development side of things and the game economy, and not building tools from scratch.
I think the other thing is there's these communities which have been built over the last 4 years, right? Speaking of Star Atlas, our community is such a pillar of why we're here, and they've developed so much over the last 4 years. And it's not just our communities. The Sandbox has a massive, impressive community. Neon Hero, all of these other communities that we work with and involve, something that you didn't really see 4 years ago. 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, you were selling a dream, you were selling a vision, and now you've converted this community by being able to deliver on that vision.
Look, we're discussing the integration, like, of NFT in, like, basically development of blockchain gaming for years, right? Like, I guess every year on every conference, we're saying, like, it's very close, but we still don't have, like, a real example of a cool game with, I'm not talking about Telegram mini apps, of course, just like real game with real mass adoption, which will be available, and so which will attract both Web3 old users and newcomers and traditional gamers. How do you think why?
Yeah, I would disagree. I would say go on the Star Atlas Discord, type in /key, get a key, and go try the game. No, I think we're very, very close. Again, it goes back to the life cycle of development. I think that the game quality is up there. I mean, you say let's not talk about Telegram bots and all of this. They have massive adoption. Mobile gaming is probably the biggest sector in gaming right now. If we look at other segments, like where we're trying to position ourselves in AAA, that just takes longer. And in terms of the quality of the graphics, the quality of the gameplay, we go to conventions, we put it in front of people, and people love it. We just had our first tournament at Breakpoint in Singapore, and people were coming in, they'd never played a Web3 game, and they were extremely impressed. So the quality is there, we just need a little longer for the product to mature, for the game loops to be repeatable, and for people to be able to enjoy it fully.
I think also we have to think about what we mean by mass adoption, because in
No, I'm not talking about like crazy popular, like normal traditional gaming hits, but like in terms of we don't have that much users, at least.
Totally. But I think also we have to think about what kind of users matter to us, because the characteristics of Web3 games are different. So if you take Sandbox, for example, easy example for me, they're 100% paying users. So it's much more like a premium game of old. Whereas if we think about it in the freemium model, we'd only expect 2% of the user base to actually be spending money. So 1 million users, would be equivalent to a 50 million user Web2 game. And so if you upscale it in that way, if you look at, again, picking on Sandbox, the retention is much higher. The spending is several orders of magnitude higher than you would expect in a traditional game, even a console game. So it's actually a much different kind of audience.
Yeah, right. Okay, let's back to building a bit, at least. How do you think what the new projects and newcomers in the space have to do to regain the momentum we had like a few years ago? Because to be honest, like from my perspective, I don't see many NFT projects, the new ones. I see gaming projects, but it's like basically most of these gaming projects won't be here in the market for a long time.
I mean, I think you need to make good product. That's the first one, enjoyable product that people want to play, and then bring in the value of blockchain into it. So I think that the narrative at the beginning was, and that we've seen with a lot of smaller projects, is about, oh, we're a crypto game, come and play us because we're a crypto game, we've got a token, we've got NFTs. And we kind of have to invert that on its head, I think. I think people need to play it because it's the experience that they're looking for, because it's fun, because it's repeatable, because it fulfills whatever need they have. And then kind of show the value that having NFTs and tokens and on-chain architecture and all of that has. So I think we need to invert that narrative of, oh yeah, people should play our game because it's a crypto game. People should play our game because it's fun, and then realize the value of having crypto NFTs.
I was about to ask that. Like, do people really have to know the game is on blockchain or not?
I think there's a lot of value in people understanding that the game is on blockchain, and we're very vocal about this. So, like, we understand the conversations about wallet abstraction and all of this, but the truth is they have real assets there, and we need to guide the user into understanding what that means and what the power of that is. And just trying to obfuscate that, take that away from the user. I understand it as a UA strategy. I understand that it works for certain games. In our case, we're building an on-chain economy, a fully on-chain economy. So it's important for people to understand that there are repercussions to your actions. There are financial motivations. You need to understand the value that the blockchain is bringing and how that differentiates Star Atlas or any other game from a Web2 game. So I don't think you should obfuscate blockchain. I think you need to educate, and you can take them through it. You could have a tutorial. Your tutorial to the game could be, here's how you fly your ship. And by the way, this is your wallet. This is what you can do with your wallet. These are where your assets are. It's super important to keep your private key safe, all of this stuff, right? So I'm not a big advocate of complete obfuscation, but more of education and kind of bringing it in as the player develops in his experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Miguel more, because I understand the UA challenges, right? Onboarding to self-custody is notoriously awful for pretty much everything.
Still, for years.
Yes, of course. But ownership does not have to mean self-custody necessarily. But I think if you obfuscate it too much, as Miguel said, the challenge is people then don't appreciate that they actually own something. So if you think about it from a gaming perspective, if I have two equivalent games, one on blockchain and one not, how do I explain to them that there's actually a superior benefit to owning assets if they don't actually understand that they own the assets, that they can't visually see the difference? You know, I own a car, I take an Uber, there's a difference to it, right? And only a subsection of the users may use all of the functionality that ownership offers them. Maybe some of them will take their NFTs and go get DeFi loans, and you know, those people will be your power users. But I think you still need to make it clear to everybody that there is that opportunity, because otherwise they don't appreciate the asset. They don't actually value it for what it's worth because they don't understand that they own it.
I think blockchain games and like the modern ones and mini apps and Telegram, because they're wildly popular, they have one problem. Many people are there just for the rewards. So how the new projects can build a revenue stream so they don't get in this trap?
So I think rewards are one way in which we can build a user acquisition funnel. But ultimately, you want to distill down your audience and figure out how you're going to segment your audience into different kinds of users, and different kinds of users have different reasons for being there, both for them and for the game developer. And that's the complexity of building this kind of on-chain economy, because you actually have a lot more variables. In traditional gaming, we usually had people who spent time and people who spent money, and those were two-player types, right? Whereas in a Web3 game, we actually end up with 7 or 8 different player types. So actually, it just means that there's a lot more complexity in figuring out how they interact with each other. But I'm of the opinion that you always want to have all of those player types, because everybody serves a function.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, play to earn has gotten a bit of a bad rep because of past models, which were the first of its kind. The financial motivation is something that is unique about the new value proposition that Web3 gaming brings. And so these users, I mean, maybe in, unauthorized secondary marketplaces, you had some users like that before in other games, but, the sanctioned marketplaces and potential to earn from the time that you put into a game is something very new to Web3. I think that there is something to say about the way in which you reward these players, or the way in which the financial reward can come. If it's purely emission-based, then you might fall into a trap of you need to grow to sustain kind of this economy. It's harder to balance that economy if you're basing the rewards to the players solely on emissions. We have a browser game, Star Atlas Golden Era, where the financial motivation comes from developing your fleet, finding the resources that are in need in the market, and then having a completely peer-to-peer marketplace. So it's completely supply and demand driven. That means that if there's less players, yeah, prices go down. There's less of an incentive for people to do specific things in the game. That is a much more sustainable model that is still interesting for people looking for that financial motivation, which are definitely a part of your users. But it's a safer, if you want, or a more stable economic system that reflects better what happens, in the real world.
Yeah, agreed. Guys, we have just 2 minutes, so the last one. How do you see NFT and Metaverse spaces developing in next few years? If we're not in cycles anymore, maybe. Maybe you spotted some emerging trends that could help rebuild the public interest in these concepts.
So I think when it comes to metaverses, I think that it's just a matter of time, because as Miguel pointed out, these products are very complex and very large, and they take time to develop. So they will all get better over time. I think when it comes to NFTs, one of the interesting things that I've noticed recently is meme coins launching NFT collections. And so I think it points to the fact that culture these things are cyclical, and that once you develop great communities, you need to have ways to connect directly to your consumers, and NFTs are always a fantastic way to connect to consumers.
But many brands, like both medium-sized ones and big ones and very luxury ones, tried to enter the space and failed.
Yes, but I think that's execution. That's not necessarily a problem with the technology. Maybe the product in that case, which was not an NFT but a poorly executed NFT, where they didn't understand how to relate to their consumers and how to build the culture, which is why I think we've seen more success from so-called Web3 native brands than from Web2 brands trying to, because there was a cultural disconnect rather than a technology disconnect.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, trends, you'll see more and more of these experiences also being built in Metaverse. I mean, there's this, NFT collections coming from meme coins, but there's also NFT collections going into gaming and creating their gaming experiences, right? So I think that will be a trend that we continue to see. I'm also very excited, obviously, about all the new technologies that are coming. Aether was just here. The possibilities of cloud computing and decentralized cloud computing for accessibility to high-quality metaverses and experiences, AR, VR, AI, all of these things will have a massive impact in the way the experience is perceived by the user, and will improve them massively as well.
I mean, let's not forget, literally the most popular traditional AAA game in the world right now is Off the Grid, which is a Web3 game.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Thank you. It seems we're out of time. Great talk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.